First of all, I want to commend Deputy Kenny for moving this bill and ensuring that we have this very important debate, historic debate in many ways, here in this chamber this evening. I also want to take the opportunity to commend former Minister John Halligan, who had done a huge amount of work on this issue, as people know, and indeed all of the campaigners that Deputy Kenny mentioned as well, that have been doing a lot of work on this issue and understanding the complexity of the issue and advocating their position, in my view, from a very compassionate perspective, and I want to commend them for that. I think it's important in the context of this bill that we're very clear what the bill does. And I think that's important for obvious reasons, because it is a divisive bill in the sense that there are opposing views. And I'm very respectful of all of the views and all of the opinions. Personally, I'm in favour of this bill, and I'm in favour of the principle of the bill. But I also understand that there are people in this House and outside this House that have very genuine and legitimate concerns and fears that I think need to be responded to. The bill provides for assisted dying in the event of terminal illness, and terminal illness only. Assisted dying would only be permitted after assessment by the attending medical practitioner and an independent medical practitioner. Before countersigning a patient's declaration, they must verify that the patient is terminally ill, has the capacity to make the decision to end their own life, and has a clear and settled intention to end their life, which was reached voluntarily on an informed basis without coercion or duress. There is a clause which protects conscientious objectors, and rightly so, and that no medical practitioner would be obliged to provide assisted dying under this bill. There are amendments that I would want to make to this bill, such as a waiting period for reflection, psychiatric evaluations, hearing more from experienced medical practitioners, and confirmation that criteria are met by a High Court judge, by a medical person and by a lay person. So there are amendments that I would make to this bill and my party will make. I also accept that we need proper scrutiny of this bill. And while I will support the P&B and the bill, and I will oppose the amendment, if there is a special committee set up, then of course that should do its job, and we all have to be responsible and compassionate in how we come at this issue, and I certainly and my party will play our part in all of that. I want to also make, from my perspective, a very important point, because it's very personal to me, and I've heard some people already argue this, that somehow this will undermine palliative care, that assisted dying is not a replacement for palliative care, or is a replacement. It is not a replacement. In 2018, January 2018, my mum went for a routine test, or what she thought was a routine test, and she went on her own to a hospital. And unfortunately, she got bad news that she had, or most likely had, cancer. Within a couple of weeks of getting that news, she ended up in St James's Hospital and had the majority of her stomach removed. And she fought a long battle over a number of months, and I know my family and her friends followed her in that battle and supported her every step of the way. Every single day was a battle. In November 2018, and we thought she was through the worst of it, but obviously the cancer was still there and it was growing, she ended up back in St James's Hospital. And she was there for 5-6 weeks. She couldn't eat, and we had a fair idea what was happening, but we were hoping that it was something that could be dealt with. And on Christmas Eve 2018, she went for surgery. And I remember I was putting my two kids to bed on Christmas Eve, and I got a phone call to say that she was dying and the cancer was back and she had a few short weeks to live. And I immediately got into a car, went to the hospital, and saw my mum. I had spoke to her on the phone before she went for her surgery, and she was full of hope. And the first thing I noticed was that the life was gone out of her. You could see it in her eyes. And it was obviously an awful experience, but it was in a very small hospital room. Very small hospital room. She was eventually transferred to a palliative care unit. We didn't have one in Waterford at the time, or the South East. It was in Harold's Cross. And she got absolutely tremendous care. And they did every single thing that was humanly possible to make sure that she didn't die in pain. And that was the one thing she kept saying to us. She was very brave all the way through, as I'm sure everybody has their own experience of similar stories, that she didn't want to die in pain. And I know that the staff did absolutely everything. But I also know that there are people where palliative care simply doesn't do that because of the nature of the illness. And that's the point. And then it's a matter of personal choice. And I think that we should face up to that. And we can name the diseases. I'm not going to name them because there are people who will have those diseases and those illnesses who will make a decision not to end their life, even if the legislation was there, and that is the case, and that should be respected. But equally, there are people who should, in my view, if they're in that situation and are facing into what we can only describe as a horrible death, that with all of the safeguards that can and should be in place, and I believe there should be and absolutely has to be safeguards that protect vulnerable people, that make sure that people make this voluntarily, and that it's done in the most sensitive, in the most compassionate way, and in the most legally sound way, with all of the advice that can be possibly given, and with a cooling off period. I think in those circumstances, I think compassion tells me, and humanity tells me, that we should allow that person to have that opportunity and to have that choice. And I know that's going to be difficult for some people. And I know this debate is going to be very, very difficult. I genuinely hope that we don't see this debate turning into what we've seen with previous similar debates on maybe similar issues. Because notwithstanding differences I'll have with some people in this chamber, I sincerely understand their point of view. And I sincerely understand that it raises moral issues and it raises ethical issues for people. And people have already been on to me. We're all being lobbied from people with different perspectives and different views. And that's why I think if there is an Oireachtas committee, and the reason why I will oppose the amendment is not because I don't believe there should be scrutiny, and not because I don't believe that there should be full examination. I agree with Deputy Farrell when he says that this will take time, and it should take time. Because if we're sincere about this, and I believe the author of the bill is sincere about it, and in fact has said he wants scrutiny and wants proper debate on this issue, if we're sincere about it, then we have to give it the time that it deserves. And I'm glad, by the way, that it's the Oireachtas is doing it, and not a Citizens' Assembly. Not that I'm against the Citizens' Assembly, but we are the legislators. We're elected to Dáil Éireann. We have to make decisions. And I think ultimately the people who make the decision, and we will at some point in 12 months have to come back to this issue, I believe we are the ones that should do the scrutiny, and we are the ones that should do the discussions on this issue. And I want to hear from everybody. I want to hear all views. And I will go in with an open mind. And I have to say, I've already seen that this isn't as black and white as sometimes we can make it. There are grey areas, and we have to accept that. It is not going to be straightforward. And there is a lot of work that will need to be done. So in that spirit, I want to again commend the author of the bill. In that spirit, I genuinely want to speak to those people who have done a huge amount of work on this issue over the last number of years, and who have lost loved ones, and people who have battled the courts, and people who have gone to the courts to get this issue dealt with. The fact that we're debating it here today, even if the government amendment is passed, and even if there is a committee that takes longer than maybe some of us like, it's a step forward. And it's a big step forward on this issue, and it's a genuine step forward, and from my perspective, it's a good step forward. So I think that that's the tone that I want to see this debate conducted in a compassionate one, in an understanding one, and one that reflects the diversity of opinions and diversity of views. And whatever we settle on, we settle on. So let's have that debate over the next number of months, and I certainly will look forward to engaging with people in this room and people who are not in the room.